Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Darshawn McAway. You're tuned in to wowpodcast.me. That's WOWPODCAST.me. And today we have a special guest. We have Fern Brady, and she's here to talk to us about her latest book, United Vidden. Fern, how are you doing?
Doing great. How are you on this awesome Sunday?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So let's talk about your book. Where did the theory come from before you start about this particular book? Where did the theory come from for you to write this particular category?
So, I've been a teacher for, that's like my full-time job, right? And so one of the things that I taught was sixth grade, and everyone taught social studies. And in social studies, you teach world culture. So we were learning a lot about geography and how geography affects the development of different cultures. It affects how you dress. It affects the different ways that people sort of unite around a common identity. And we studied bringing in literature from all over the world. We studied mythology and things. And so one of the projects that I always had my students to do was to create their own imaginary planet. And so they had to apply what we were learning about world cultures and geography to this imaginary world that they had just discovered. And from that, we would create stories all along through the whole year of different genres and of different categories. We made up mythologies for their world. And as they were doing that, I was creating as well because I was modeling. So I and I've always been a fan of sci-fi fantasy. And so it was a really natural fit to me to bring in the imagination of a planet for the kiddos to create their own, and it made it so much more hands-on.
Right.
And that's where
All right.
everything
So
was born.
gotcha. So let's talk about United Vidden. What is that book about?
So United Vidden takes place on planet Jorn, and it is basically one of 51 planets in this alliance. It is going to have, for the first time in its history, a female queen ruler, and she is excited to get to be the queen. Her father is supposed to abdicate when she turns 21. He abdicates so that she can rule, and he can be there to help her. And this is their system. And so when the book opens, she's turning 21. It's her birthday. She has met all the requirements. She's done everything that every other heir has ever done. She's done it well. And so she's expecting him to abdicate, but he instead tells her that he is not going to abdicate. He's going to ask her to marry. He's basically forcing her to marry Amiel, who is the Prince of Alden on their world, because he knows that there is an uprising coming. There's a war coming. And he has pretty good evidence that this is happening. And so he's trying to get support from the Intergalactic Alliance, and he's trying to basically protect their planet because Amiel is a proven military leader. But as happens often in relationships, he doesn't say what he really needs to say. And so he leaves on this information gathering mission with her devastated that in her mind, he just doesn't trust her to rule. That he maybe has always wanted Amiel to rule. Because she begins to, ruminate on how many experiences she's had where her father has really been pro Amiel.
Right.
And so, she makes a horrible mistake. She leaves. She runs away. She's like, well, if he wants him to be the king, let him. And that throws chaos into the mix because what she doesn't know is her dad tried to do an alliance with Amiel without a marriage, but Amiel really is in love with her. So he pushed for the marriage. And so Amiel thinks the father is hiding her now. And so he goes to war. And so there's just chaos. She finds out. And so she tries to come back to try to heal everything, to try to make things right. She realizes what mistake she's made, but by the time she does, Amiel has conquered her country, and her dad has died. So now the bulk of the book is really, how does she win her people back, right? How does she reestablish her authority? How does she get her birthright back? And how does she manage Amiel, right? Because like it or not, she needs him to defend the country against the real threat. And so she's faced with having to overcome essentially the greatest mistake a ruler could make. And so it's a story of redemption of and her struggle to rise to become the kind of queen that her country really needs.
So in writing a particular series such as this, do you write it with the hopes that someone would pick it up and turn it into a series, or do you just write the book to develop the characters to pull the consumer in?
You know, I write really and truly for myself. I write the story that I feel the characters were living. It almost feels, any writer will tell you, we feel a little schizophrenic sometimes because sometimes you just know that this is the story that the character lived, right? I had an editor tell me one time that I should not have her run away because princesses like that shouldn't run away and make her unlikable and blah. And I tried to rewrite it without her running away, and the reality is that she ran away. That's what she did. And so we had to just figure out how to make it so that the reader understands why she does it, right?
Right.
It's not that she's a bad person, it's just that she's young and she's devastated, she's shattered. You've grown up all your life believing that you're going to have certain destiny, and then all of a sudden it turns out that you think your father no longer really believes in you, that it shatters you. So I really write for myself, for who I think the characters are and the story they're trying to tell me. And and of course, as you work with your editors, you might adjust a little bit to think about, okay, how is it landing with your audience? Making sure that the readers will be able to connect to it. And like I said, with this one editor, right, the princess runs away. She didn't like it. Some readers are not going to like that. So I want to make sure you understand the why, why she makes this horrible mistake. And she realizes it is a mistake.
Right. So let's talk about the editor theory of things. How did you become a part of the Houston Writers Guild? Like, how did that come about?
Well, that was very interesting. So as I was teaching, and just developing these stories, a whole bunch of stories in this world, one of the ladies that came to work at my school was a member of the Houston Writers Guild. And she would go every week to a critique group. And there she would read aloud her pages and get some feedback. And I had never heard of this. I had never heard of critique groups. I didn't know what that was, or of the guild for that matter. And so she invited me one evening, and I was just amazed at how cool it was. Being able to be among other writers, being able to share your work and get input, on how they saw the story. And it was very enlightening to see that sometimes what you think you wrote isn't what actually comes across. And so after a couple of times of being invited, I just joined. I was like, this is the good stuff. And then of course I found out they do conferences and things like that. And as I was part of the group, it had started really as a kind of a one-man show, or one Roger Paulding sort of started the guild. And so eventually it began to grow. And so Pamela Hutchins, she's the one who took it on and began to sort of turn it into a nonprofit. She created kind of a board and stuff. And so when she put out the call, like, who wants to be on the board? I showed up. I was like, this is exciting. I want to be part of this, And then, she ended up having to move. And so when she moved, I jumped in. I was like, I'll do it. I'll help move it even further. And so yes, I've been at the helm for quite a while now, but it's been a very exciting journey because I get to like help other authors, the way that the guild helped me, you know.
Right. Right. So are you the owner or just a part of Inklings Publishing?
So I own Inklings Publishing.
Okay.
I started it. Yes,
Okay.
yes. And that was kind of an interesting story. So Pamela Hutchins is an indie author, right? And she wrote
Okay.
a book about like who does indie publish and how can I, what kind of loser does indie publish and how can I be one too? I think that's the title of the book. And
Okay.
she gave it to me as an advanced copy, right? And so I read it, and she goes through like the ins and outs of just publishing yourself, at the time. And this was back in 2012, 2013, And once I read that, I thought, well, I could do that. I could do that, and I didn't have a book. And then I went with these friends to like a writers retreat. We just hung out, a couple of weeks at a friend's house, and we were writing and enjoying, and we came up with all these short stories. And I thought, I could start by publishing anthologies of other writers and kind of build a company that way. And so I started kind of investigating the publishing industry and how it all worked, and kind of put together a plan, got some money together, and I launched Inklings. And we've been going for now over 10 years. This is our 11th year we're in for Inklings Publishing.
Well, congratulations. So is there an opportunity for people to submit some book ideas, some manuscripts to you guys?
Yes, we are actually open for submissions. We are open through, I believe, May is our submission window. And then our acquisition editor will take over and take a look and begin to sort through who goes to the next round and such. We often do ask for resubmits. We want stories that are really, really tight, and we look for authors, and we do interview our authors. Whoever she would think the manuscript itself is really good, then we'll interview them to see if we're a good fit.
Okay. Well, as we bring the interview to a close, do you have any workshops that you're coming up with that people can tune into, or where can they find you on social media, etc.?
Sure. So I'm mostly on Facebook as Fern Brady author, and I am actually on Twitter, Fern Brady 09. But I'm mostly on Facebook because I'm just not that great at tweeting. Some of our authors are really great at tweeting, but I don't seem to be very good at it. But you can find me on fernbrady.com, and of course on Amazon. If you look up Fern Brady on Amazon, you're going to get two Fern Brady. You're going to get the Scottish comedian, who is very, very funny, not me, and you'll get me. So if you look me up, that's the two Fern Bradys out there.
Gotcha. Well, I'm your host, Darshawn McAway. We're talking to author Fern Brady. She's the author of Love Calls and United Vidden. Go check those books out. Fern, it was a pleasure speaking with you. I hope to see you again soon.
All right, thank you for having me.
No problem.